Welcome to another edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Sean Garrison, your host and editor of DadsDivorce.com. Today we are joined by Dr. Randy Olson, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Pennsylvania. As a hobby, Dr. Olson has taken up an interest in data analysis, and his work has been featured on news outlets such as the New York Times, Wired, and 538. Recently, Dr. Olson published a blog post in which he charted the marriage and divorce rates in the United States for the last 144 years. We'll talk to him today about that research and some of his findings. Randy, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
Randy, to start with, can you tell us about just the data collection process for this? What did you have to go through in order to be able to analyze, this last 144 years of information regarding marriage and divorce rates?
Sure. So, I knew that the CDC had been collecting data on this through their National Center for Health Statistics database. So I thought, I'd just be able to go right online and there would be a easy CSV file or something to download, and I could, just check this data out. I was actually surprised, much to my dismay, that most of the data, at least, going beyond the 90s and later, by later I mean, earlier, back to the 1800s, were mostly in PDFs. So I found out that basically every month, this program releases a report on the various statistics they track, such as births, deaths, marriages, divorces, so on and so forth. And then they also publish annual reports summarizing that year's data. And so that's basically what I had to go through, which every year, for the entire time span, I had to find an annual report, copy the data into an Excel file, and then move on from there. I was actually really helped out, though, by the fact that in 1973, some wonderful employee published a summary of the data between 1867 and 1967. And so that kind of gave me this idea, too, of, oh, hey, maybe we should try to extend it, to 2010 now, at least. So that was sort of it. It was just a lot of looking through old documents, copying, pasting, and then, putting it into a machine-readable format. Actually, something I was really impressed with this database, though, is that despite the fact that this is data that covers, well over 100 years of U.S. history, they've managed to keep the reports and everything in fairly consistent format. And that's despite the fact that the people who are putting together the reports have no doubt changed. The people who manage the program have changed. And even the program has changed names and changed structure over the years as well, yet these reports are still pretty consistent. So I was really impressed with how they've organized this database.
Absolutely, and once you've finished with going through all that data, you put together in your blog post a couple charts that provided really a visual look at how the marriage and divorce rates and trends have fluctuated through the years. Can you tell me about, I guess, some of the more interesting trends that you noticed in the marriage and divorce rates just, through the different decades?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so sort of the purpose of me visualizing and sharing this data set, now that I had put in about 4 hours to compile the data, I just wanted to provide sort of a summary of the data, a visual summary, to show, hey, what are some interesting trends that happened here? And first, one of the earliest trends that I really noticed there was the effect of the Great Depression on marriage. There's a fairly steady trend of more and more marriage over time, and then suddenly there's this huge dip, and sure enough, it's exactly when the Great Depression occurred. So it kind of seems that once money gets tight, and once the economy is suffering and everything, that marriage is one of the first things that gets put on hold. So I thought that was a really interesting trend there. Another interesting thing was that immediately before both of the world wars, there was a huge spike in marriage. And then immediately after the world wars, after they concluded, there was a huge spike in divorce. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, slightly entertaining in a morbid kind of way, because it kind of showed that, there's all these young people that are getting shipped off to war. They're totally sold on the romanticism of it. And so they get married before the war. And then once they come back, maybe they're completely different people. They've grown up and they don't actually, they can't actually stand marriage after that, or they can't stand each other and they get divorced. So that was another interesting one. And then another really interesting one too was that immediately after World War II, along with the divorce spike was also a huge marriage spike. And so that right there, we were starting to see the beginning of the baby boom. As all these people came back from the war and they were ready to settle down, they're done with fighting, they want to build a family. So I thought that was also a very interesting trend in the data set.
Sure, definitely. And one of the other things you noted in your blog post was that since the 1980s, marriage rates have been declining, and now that after you take into account population, the marriage rates are actually lower than they've ever been in history in the U.S. I know you're more of a data expert, but can you give me any theories as to why those rates have declined so much to the point that they're at now?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can give sort of a personal perspective anyway, sort of my personal hypothesis, which is, I think the fact that many of the people in my age range, which is, in the 20s and maybe low 30s, we grew up during this period where divorce became incredibly common. We'd grow up seeing statistics saying, 50% of all marriages end up in divorce, things like that. And I think so. I think that things like that really sort of made marriage not as enticing of a thing to pursue once we've grown up now. And then I think another thing that really contributes to it is the fact that our generation is also sort of drowning in college debt and various other forms of debt, that we've accrued over the years. And so I think we're sort of in a slightly unique position here where, we're experiencing a major financial crunch. And you see this in all kinds of other statistics too. We're quite low on home ownership and various other things. So I think very similar to what we saw in the Great Depression, that when money gets tight, marriage is one of the things that is one of the first things that get puts on the back burner.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Randy. We really enjoyed having you here on Dad's Divorce Live.
Sure, it's great talking with you.
To read more about Dr. Olson's work, you can visit his website at randallolson.com. You can also find many other articles and resources about divorce in the United States on DadsDivorce.com. That will do it for another edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Sean Garrison, editor of DadsDivorce.com. We'll see you next time.